Hi, today we're going to be talking about releasing judgment and having more fun. If you are here live, drop a hashtag live down below. And if you are watching the replay, I'd just love to know you're here. Let me know where you're tuning in from. You can do that down below as well. Let me know if you're catching the replay. And also, one more thing, if you'd like to get the show notes from today's show, drop the word notes below and I'll make sure I get them to you. And hi, welcome. I see that some of you have joined me. I'd love to see who's here and where you're tuning in from. So drop that in the chat and let me know. So today, I've been thinking about what is a way that you can have more fun in your life? Because we know that judging sucks, and we know that it gets in the way of fully enjoying ourselves, our relationships, that it's a real downer. And if you're anything like me, you have a super judgy mind and you're super critical and it's just not always easy to know what to do with that. So on today's live, we're going to talk about letting go, enjoying the present, catching ourselves when we're judging and shifting. Because when you start to release judgment, you find that you're able to connect with people in such a deeper way because you can be open and curious about them without constantly filtering them through this like pass fail system. I'm curious, like, do you have a pass fail system that you filter people through? Because I sure have, until I decided to work on this and have this not be such a thing. So if you don't already know me, I'm Marie Elizabeth Molly. I'm a relationship alchemist, and I help people get more of what they want out of their relationships. I help them show up powerfully and authentically and confidently to ask for what they want and receive more love and all that yummy, good stuff. So again, if you are tuning in live, drop a live down below. If you're watching the replay, let me know that. I like knowing that you're here. I like seeing who's tuning in and from where. And so we're going to get started here in just a sec. So I want to start with really the foundation of how judgy we can tend to be with others is having a tendency to be very judgmental with ourselves. The root is that. The root is self-criticism. And when you live with a lot of self-criticism, it creates such a bind, like there's no room to move. I'm curious if you've noticed this. It makes it very difficult to have room to make mistakes, to try stuff, to iterate. I have a pretty hefty perfectionist background. And so I've really had to teach myself and give myself more room to experiment, to try stuff, to fail. And when we're constantly filtering ourselves and other people through this kind of pass fail filter, it just makes it hard to exist and be free, right? So I want to invite you, first of all, to really notice if you have a super judgy mind, as I tend to have. Notice if that mind is turning on you first. How intense is your self-criticism? And that could be the place to begin. Before you even think about trying to release judging others, the first step is to really handle how critical you are of yourself. And can you develop a new relationship with the part of you that likes to criticize yourself so that it's more on your side? And this is something I teach when I work with people. I teach them how to reconfigure their relationship with the voices in their head that are making it hard to be everything they want to be. That critical voice, that judging voice, that thing that makes you have this much room and you're in the straitjacket of needing to behave and do everything just right to be acceptable. The first piece of work to do is to change your relationship to your inner critic and your inner judge. And we're not going to go into how to do that today, but I want you to just think about for yourself, how could I do that? How could I change my relationship to that? You're probably not going to get rid, the idea, you're not going to cut off or get rid of your inner critic. The idea is, how do you let it be there, but not let it dominate your thoughts? I was talking with Patrick about this topic over lunch, and I love what he said. He's been doing this thing lately that I want to share with you. And his example was driving down the freeway and somebody cuts you off. And this is something that just bugs the crap out of him. And he gets very judgy about that. Like, oh, they're a bad driver and what stupid person, and they're so unsafe. And, he goes down, he gets a little road ragey around it whenever he gets cut off. So what he said he started doing is he started making up a story about them, because when he goes into judgment about the person who cut him off on the freeway, he has made a story about them, that they are a bad driver, that they are unsafe, etc. So why not make up a different story? And we can all do this. This is what we do when we judge, is we make up a story about somebody, and then we decide if that's true, and it's a story we don't like, and it's a story that allows us to judge them, look down on them, and feel superior. Why not make up a different story? This is what I'm curious about. And so the invitation is to make up a new story that allows the person's behavior to not be so bad. Now, obviously, I am not suggesting you do this in a situation if you are being abused or unsafe. I'm talking about basic healthy relationships or friendships where you're judgy, or family relationships where you're judgy, and your relationship with yourself. For example, when someone cuts you off on the freeway, instead of being stupid and a bad driver and dangerous, they could be rushing their pregnant wife to the hospital because she's about to give birth. They could be trying to haul ass and get to work on time because they've been told that if they're going to be late one more time, that's it. Or they could be rushing to get to their kid who's in danger, right? There's so many reasons besides the reason that comes to your mind first why somebody might be behaving in the way they're behaving. And I want to turn it now to intimate relationship, because I think that's where we get the judgiest, aside from how we judge ourselves. That's where we get the judgiest. And so I want to say a word about that. So when we judge our partners for something, I'm going to give a personal example. So when Patrick and I, in the first few years of our relationship, I would get judgy if he would slow down to listen to what I was asking him. So for example, he might be cooking and I'll ask him a question and he kind of stops doing what he's doing to answer me. And I judged that, like, what's wrong with him? Like, why are you, I still don't stop. Like, keep doing the thing you're doing, whatever it is that he's doing. Like, why do you stop just because I'm asking you a question? Until I understood, and because he told me, and we learned that he doesn't multitask well, right? I didn't know that, but he made it clear, and made a very clear request that when he's driving or cooking or doing something that requires his attention, that I not ask him stuff that requires him to think, that I not launch into a story about something that requires him to listen, because his attention is going to be divided and he's not going to be very effective in that spot. So he would rather me not ask until later and be able to do the thing that he's doing with full concentration. I think that's amazing. Like, how great to know that about yourself, that, you know what, I'm not going to be able to fully pay attention to you and do this thing. So please ask the thing later, or would you rather I stop and pay attention now? That's great self-knowledge and great self-responsibility because he cares, right? But I wouldn't have known that if I had just sat there judging him all the time about this particular thing rather than opening up a conversation about it. Hey, Dana, good to see you. Welcome. So that's an invitation there. So this is a little bit different than making up a story because we were actually talking about it. So that's the second piece, is if you are having a judgment about your partner for some way that they do stuff, get curious instead and ask with the purpose of getting to know how their mind works or how they do stuff, not for the purpose of, sorry, I have an itch on my back, not for the purpose of reinforcing your idea that they're dumb, or incompetent or whatever the judgment you may have about them in the moment. Because chances are they have a very good reason for why they're doing the thing they're doing. They just haven't communicated it to you, and it's different than your reasons, which makes it no less valid. It's funny how we recognize that we are complex beings that have contradictory impulses, but we don't often give that grace to other people that we're in relationship with. So when they act inconsistently or when they do stuff that doesn't serve their highest good, we judge. And it's like, but you hella competent, like you hella complicated too. Like, you don't always do shit that's for your highest good. So, So the invitation here is to open your mind, to get curious about how others tick. And get curious about how you tick. Because again, most of our judginess of other people comes out of our inability to give ourselves room to be imperfect. I'm going to say that again. Most of our judginess about other people comes out of our inability to give ourselves room to be imperfect. I'd love to know if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat because I'm riffing here. So I have space to answer questions. If if there's a particular judgment issue that hangs you up, drop it in the chat. I'm watching the comments as I'm speaking, and I'm hoping you're on a particular platform that I can see the comments, because it seems like sometimes there's some platforms I can't totally see it. But anyway, you are invited to ask questions and share particular judgment situations that are hard for you so that I can talk about that. Something to think about is that we can't selectively shut down in one area and have other areas be very open. In other words, if our minds are very judgy and we shut down our permission for others to be themselves because they're different than us and we don't agree with how they do stuff, that shuts our heart too. So shutting your mind tends to shut your heart. You're not as generous toward them. You're not as flexible with their foibles. It's hard to laugh when stuff doesn't go well. And the converse is also true. The more you open your mind and allow people to be who and how they are, again, not if they're abusing you, not if, you're not safe, but I'm talking about in basically healthy situations. If you open your mind and get curious about who is this mysterious being who does shit in a different way than I do, that wouldn't be my first choice, but clearly works for them in some way because that's how they're doing it. Like, who appointed me the arbiter of everything perfect? All right, I did. However, they didn't appoint me. They didn't appoint me as the arbiter of perfection. I did. So that's the thing to consider when you're able to open your mind and accept that people do things differently than we do, and accept that you are a complex and contradictory person with impulses that are not always going in the direction of that you want them to go. When you give yourself more space, then your heart can open too. You can access more love. This is a beautiful comment here from Dana. This will help me a lot as I take care of my dad, knowing when to just leave him alone versus other times when he's chatty. Yes, what I'm feeling and what you're describing is the shift from having attention on myself and what I need to having attention on where's this person at? Like, are they wanting to connect or not wanting to connect right now? And how do I calibrate? Because it's not about denying yourself. If you really want to connect, connect. But if you're interested in having an experience with someone that's generative and feels good, it helps to calibrate what you're bringing and asking of the situation to what's available. It's not about shrinking yourself. It's not about shrinking your desires, but it is about noticing where people are at outside of yourself. Because a lot of us don't tend to do that with any regularity. We tend to be very focused on this is my experience and my, what I want, and I want it to go a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing to think about with judgment is the way that I'm going to come back to this pass-fail idea that I began with at the top of this video. If we're constantly evaluating life from the perspective of pass-fail, either toward ourselves or others, it keeps us in a very limited and narrow dynamic, because we're constantly jockeying to pass, and we're constantly monitoring and shrinking, shifting our behavior so as not to fail. And the true invitation, when you give up judging people, or at least you catch yourself when you're judging and then allow yourself to make a different story about them that makes the thing they're doing not so bad, then there's just so much more room. It's like taking off a bra that's too tight at the end of the day. Like, you can finally breathe. I'm having trouble finding a fitting bra right now. So this is a very personal example to me. It's like, at the end of the day, I take off this thing and I'm just like, oh yes, I can get this thing off that's been cutting into my rib cage. It's similar with judgment and with approaching life as a pass-fail endeavor. Life's not a pass-fail endeavor, no matter what the Bible says, excuse me, but it's not. And so keeping that in mind, that I just flashed on the Egyptians, after you die, your heart gets weighed on this scale, and, that's a very useful paradigm for, encouraging people to be good. But I'm not sure that's actually how it goes. I'm just not sure. I don't have a memory of dying and being judged in that way. So I can't confirm that is what happens. But I do know that while we're alive, it's the function of the mind to categorize, to attempt to order things, to attempt to assign position. All of that is the nature of the mind. But the mind is not the sum total of who you are. You are a heart. You are a consciousness that is living in a body with a mind and a heart. And consciousness is neutral, frankly. It really doesn't care. So the key is here to notice if you are trying to live out of a pass-fail position with respect to life. And that's the thing to open up. Could I have more room to be imperfect? If I allowed myself to be more imperfect, could I give others more grace in their imperfection? Could I, if I'm making something mean something about my partner, myself, someone else, could I make a game and come up with 3 other meanings that could also be true that make that thing not so bad? Just to loosen the grip, because in that loosening of the grip, way more pleasure is available, way more fun is available, way more love and connection is available, because then people don't have to feel like they're on eggshells around you and one fuck up and they're gone, right? They're going to get cut out because they're living in a pass fail paradigm that you've created. You are still invited to drop questions, comments, reflections. How's this landing? I'd love to know. Even if you're watching the replay, please drop comments. Let me know how this is landing with you. And I'm going to recap. But before I recap, I want to talk about a little bit about Relationship Alchemy, which is my flagship program. And in this program, we cover 5 important areas of relationship that really, when worked with all together, create a solid foundation for a thriving, loving, permissioning, expansive, growth supporting relationship. And we're going to begin a new round in May. So I just want to make sure you know about it. And if you feel drawn to go deeper with me in some way, you are invited to book a call. Let's talk. I have a quick clarity call where I can ask you a few questions. We can just touch base, start to get to know one another, and decide together if we want to have a longer conversation about Relationship Alchemy, or if you just want some free resources that I can recommend to you, some specific things for your situation. So I'm going to drop the link to book a clarity call in the comments here, and you are welcome to book that. And let's just start a conversation. I'd love to know more about your situation. I can either recommend resources or we can decide to have a longer conversation about Relationship Alchemy. Relationship Alchemy is for all women and regardless of relationship status. So the determining factor of whether or not Relationship Alchemy for you is not whether you're single or partnered. It is for you if you want to learn how to show up with more openness, more permission, more facility with asking for what you want without feeling bad about having needs and desires, more facility with asking for what you want in bed without being afraid that you're gonna destroy your partner's ego, more facility with having your work and your relationship play well together, more facility with showing up real on dates and filtering people, making filtering a practice, so that you can more quickly find someone with whom you actually have resonance. Handle your people pleaser, handle the part of you that shreds you yourself if something doesn't go well. We're going to cover all of this in the coming year. So you're invited to book a clarity session, a clarity call, and I'll pop that link below. So I'm going to recap now. Today, we are talking about releasing judgment and having more fun. And the first piece is that judgment really stems out of self-criticism, self-judgment. It starts there. And it starts with a tendency to create a pass-fail dynamic in your life. So the first place to work on around releasing judgment is catching yourself. Do you have a pass-fail relationship to life? Are you constantly jockeying to do it right so you'll be approved of, so you'll be acceptable, so that your critic will shut up? And then, also operating out of a fear of, oh, well, let me not do something so that I fail. Are you afraid of canceling yourself? That's the place to begin. The second piece is if you or someone else is doing something that isn't in your highest good or having a behavior you don't approve of, again, that's not life-threatening, that's not abusive, that's not active addiction, something you actually might have some modicum of control over. And you find yourself judging yourself or that person. Catch it, recognize this, define the story that you are creating in that moment that's making the judgment. There's a story, a meaning that you're making out of what you or somebody else is doing. You're making it mean something that you have judgment about. So catch what that is and play a game with yourself. What could 3 other stories be for this behavior? 3 other reasons why they might be engaging in this behavior, or why I might have done this, that don't carry the same sting, that don't activate your judgment. In this way, you begin to loosen the grip of your mind, which is built to judge. Like the role of the mind is to categorize and filter and place things in stages and hierarchies and things like that. That is the nature of the mind. You are never going to stop that thing from happening on the level of the mind. So you have to actually go somewhere deeper and access more spaciousness. Give yourself permission to imagine what other stories might also be true. Recognize that the story that your mind is telling you is not the only story. You are not the arbiter of perfection for the entire universe. Hate to break it to you, but you're not. And nor are you the arbiter of perfection for yourself, because you're not the best judge of that. See what I did there? Remember that opening your mind to be more curious. This is part 3, opening your mind to be more curious and allowing other people the space to be themselves, allowing you to be complex and contradictory. Opening your mind in that way allows you to open your heart. And that is the foundation for a lot more fun, a lot more permission, a lot more connection in your life. This has been Releasing Judgment and Having More Fun. Again, you're invited to drop comments, questions. I do come back after the fact and look at these comments to see if there are any questions I can answer, anything I can help with. So please do, even if you're watching the replay, drop comments if you have questions or reflections. I'm Marie Elizabeth Mali, your relationship alchemist. And remember, until next time, a great relationship starts with you.